My whole family and I used to live in a farmhouse in upstate New York. Living in a farm area was definitely an experience, whether it was good or bad, but this one was downright terrifying. It was a Wednesday night. It was early 90s, and most schools in the rural area would not give homework at the time. So most of the time after school, I'd just help my dad around the farm. He'd even let me drive the plow sometimes, and I had a blast from it. Anyways, it was a Wednesday night, and it was dark outside. For whatever reason, my dad randomly remembered that we hadn't plowed the fields in a while. He told me to go outside and plow the field. As much as I didn't want to go outside at 7 p.m. at night, I had to do it because I really didn't have a reason not to. I went outside to the driveway and walked a little further towards the barn where we kept the tractor and plow. I opened the heavy door to the barn and turned on the light. I walked over to the tractor and started it. Most of you would probably think it's weird that a kid could start a plowing tractor, but that's how life was in the farm. I had to take the tractor out of the barn before I could hook up the plow to the rear hitch. I made a quick small 3-point turn and drove the tractor out of the front where the plow was, and I lined it up. I got out of the tractor and hooked up the plow. I made a sharp left turn to start plowing the farm. Our farm was around 300 acres, so it wasn't a massive farm, but it did take a while to plow. I thought that it would take me around 40 minutes to plow the whole place. Plowing was usually boring because I'd done it many times. It was cool the first few times, but after that, I just wish I hadn't had to do it anymore. But this night, it was different. I felt a little scared because I felt alone in the middle of the farm in the dark with just my house in the distance with the light pouring out of the windows into the outside. It was the type of dark where you couldn't really see anything, but you could see movement nonetheless. Then, at the side by the tree line, I saw a humanoid figure move quickly past one of the trees. My heart dropped. I mean, I wouldn't have thought much of it if the figure looked like a fox or something like that, but this looked like a person. I kept plowing trying to forget about what happened. I was so close to that tree line. The fear that that figure would jump out and kill me just freaked me out. At one point, I decided I was done, even though I hadn't plowed the last part of the farm. I was turning the tractor around to go back to the barn when I saw that figure again in the rearview mirror. My heart jumped and I floored the gas on the tractor. The crappy tractor accelerated with a roar. That thing suddenly started charging at me. It was just a silhouette of black fog. I started crying. The horror took over me. Luckily, the tractor was a little faster than that thing, but it seemed to be approaching me. As I approached the house, the horror that I was feeling just kept building. Once I reached the barn, I saw the silhouette in back of me still running. I quickly turned off the tractor and leaped off of it and ran around the house to the front door. At one point, I looked back and I froze. The figure was now an arm's length of me. That only made me scream and run faster. I pounded on the door, but nobody was answering. Thinking on my feet, I decided to run around the house one more time to buy time for my parents to get to the door. The next time around, I pounded even harder. Then my dad opened the door and he asked me what was wrong. I slammed the door behind him and explained everything. He didn't believe me. He thought that my mind was just playing tricks on me because of the fact that it was dark. I tried to assure him that I really did see what I saw, but he didn't believe me. To be honest, I was even starting to question my sanity at this point because it just felt too real. Needless to say, there was no sleep had that night. I was twisting and turning the whole night. Our windows don't have shutters because our neighbors are miles away and you don't really need privacy. Just as I was thinking about that, I saw a big humanoid-looking shadow pass my window. Once again, I freaked out and ran downstairs to my dad's room to explain what happened. This time my mom got involved and it started getting annoying. My dad told me to take him to my room. I took him in my room, and just like that, the shadow passed my door again. We both freaked out this time and called the cops. Even the operator seemed skeptical about what we were saying, but now that 2 people had confirmed it, we knew it was real. Eventually, our neighbors learned about it, and then the whole town figured out. The really creepy part was that there was a young 9-year-old girl that went missing a week ago in the neighborhood. The night of her disappearance, the girl's mom had seen a shadow just like the one I saw walking outside my house. 2 things like that don't just happen like that. It's too much of a coincidence. The even worse part is that the girl's dead body was found in the forest behind our house the day after we reported the apparition to the police. This leaves me thinking, was that figure coming over to my house to kidnap one of us after just killing a 9-year-old girl? I've moved since, but for the next few years that we lived there, we had reports of the same figure occasionally lurking around. I used to work at the night shift for a McDonald's locally. I was in college, so it was enough to keep me afloat, but I was barely scraping by. I had school during the day, so that obviously meant working the graveyard hours. It was definitely strange working the graveyard hours. I wouldn't say I was scared, because I was never really scared of the dark, but it was a weird experience. Business was really slow during the middle of the night, but I'd have people coming in up until about 10 p.m. My boss made me work the worst shift possible that night. He made me work the 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. shift. I'd get paid more for that because it was a Friday night and that meant that more people would be coming in. My boss gave me a key to the front door before leaving, and then he left. Truthfully, most of the time I'd be playing video games on my phone and eating some of the food in the back instead of actually working all the time. I definitely pushed it with the amount of things I got away with. Anyways, it was about 1 in the morning and I started to get a little tired because I had school the last day. I went into the back to get myself a Coke. When I came back out front, I saw a man at the door. He was wearing a black hoodie with white sweatpants. He had his hood down, so I couldn't see his face. It was honestly a little creepy. He came over to the counter and said in a mumble, "Can I get a cheeseburger?" For whatever reason, his kind of creepy presence made me feel submissive. I said okay and went in the back to take out one of the patties from the oven. There was a rule that you can't leave a customer alone in the front without supervision to avoid theft. For that exact reason, I was stressed. I came back with the man's burger and placed it on the counter. I rung it up and he paid. Then he asked me where the restroom was, again, in a mumble. I wanted to say that it was only for staff, which it was, but for whatever stupid reason I felt vulnerable and told him where it was. The reason that the bathroom was only for staff was because that there was an opening to the back there that led to the kitchen. The rule wasn't really in place to avoid customer theft, but just for cleanliness. Right now I was wondering if I should call my boss, but I figured I'd wait because the man hadn't actually done anything. The rest of the night went normal. I went in the back a couple of times but never saw the man leave. I figured that he left while I was in the back because I looked around the whole place about 30 minutes after he went back and he wasn't there. My boss let me leave at 8 a.m. The next day my boss called me at about 8 p.m. in a frantic voice. He struggled to bring out the words, but I eventually heard him say, I found the janitor dead in the bathroom." My heart sank. As I put 2 and 2 together, my heart started racing. I told my boss that I'd meet him at the place. When I arrived, he looked understandably shaken. He led me to the bathroom, where I saw it. The janitor's bloody corpse on the stall floor. It was terrible. I'd never seen something so disturbing. I told my boss about what happened last night, and then we called the police. It became a huge scene, like the type you see in a movie. I have nightmares to this day seeing that corpse on the bathroom floor. I was actually good friends with the janitor, so it was definitely tragic and sad as well. When I was 24, I briefly babysitted as a side job because I needed extra money to pay off some of my graduate student loans. One weekend I got a request to babysit a 2-year-old boy. The woman and her husband were going on vacation to Los Angeles for the weekend, and they needed somebody to watch their baby. I never really liked babysitting little kids because I'd have to change diapers and do all the care that is taking care of a baby, but it meant money, so I took the opportunity. The baby's name was Nicholas. For most of the day, I'd watch Nicholas play while watching something on my phone, watching TV, or doing work. I'd feed him in the morning, afternoon, and then early in the evening. At about 7 p.m., I'd put him in his crib and he would fall asleep rather easily. Nicholas's mom had a baby monitor to watch him while he was sleeping. I passed out on the couch at about 9 p.m. because watching even one 2-year-old baby was a lot. I woke up to some beeping sound. It was 2 in the morning. The baby monitor was beeping, indicating that there was movement detected. But how would that be possible? Nicholas was sleeping, lying on his back. He wasn't moving. I figured that something had fallen off the shelf. Regardless, I went to Nicholas's room to check it out. When I went in, I saw the nightstand clock was on the ground. I thought that maybe it was just on the side and it fell off. I put it in the middle of the shelf so it wouldn't fall again. I went back downstairs and fell asleep pretty fast. About an hour later, I woke up to more beeping from the monitor. I saw on the camera that the clock had fallen again. In my half-fallen asleep state, I decided to just leave the clock on the ground. I fell back asleep. Then another hour later, I heard the monitor beeping again. This time I looked more intently, but everything was normal, including the clock. It was placed on the desk. Then I remembered the last time I woke up. How would Nicholas pick up the clock? He couldn't even walk very well, let alone get out of his crib and then climb up a shelf. Then I realized there had to be somebody putting the clock on the ground. I ran to Nicholas's room to look around. Then, ever so slightly, I heard the door to the bathroom creak open slightly. I freaked out and took Nicholas. I went down the stairs and dialed 911. Then I heard a window break upstairs. About 5 minutes later, the police arrived. They found the point of entry from the intruder. He came in through a downstairs window and then left through Nicholas's bedroom window. Nicholas's parents cut the trip short and came back to let me leave. They did scold me a little bit, but in the end it really wasn't my fault that there was an intruder. I can't imagine how scary this would have been for the parents if they were home. But I'm just happy I live far away from them so I don't have to worry about a creepy man breaking into my house.